back to my channel. I hope that you're doing well. Welcome to another video and welcome to my best books of 2023. Oh my gosh, I can't believe we're at the end of the year and talking about best books. Like, it's just wild to me, but I am so excited to be able to sit down and gush about the books that I have absolutely loved this year. I've done a lot of reading this year. I've read 270 plus books, and it was very hard to narrow down a list. So just like last year, I did 23 favorite books for the year of 2023 because anything less than that was literally impossible. I think my original list started at like 50 something. But when you think about it, and I've read like that many books in a year, like to have that many fantastic reads, first of all, is great, but also makes sense. Like, my numbers are high, so the books that I'm going to read and love is hopefully high, which is the point of reading. You want to love what you read, so I'm not mad at it. It's just, it was very hard to kick some things off the list and narrow down my 23 books. Okay, I am going to talk about these in no particular order, but at the very end of the video, I will share with you my favorite book of the year. But without further ado, let's get into it. I'm gonna first start off with books that I don't have here. I own them, I just don't have them in this house, but I don't want to forget them, so let's talk about those first. Also, I should clarify, because I had so many books on my list, and a lot of them were parts of series, if they were a part of series and both of the books ended up on my favorites, I just grouped them together because it's just easier to talk about them as a whole than trying to pick a favorite from each series. So up first, I want to talk about Twisted Hate and Twisted Lies by Anna Huang, the third and fourth book in the Twisted series. I did read both of those this year and loved them so freaking much. I don't know what she puts in her book. I think it's crack because honestly, so freaking good. So freaking good. And I'm so happy that I finished up that series and loved it as much as everyone else seemed to. Of the two, I think I would have to pick Twisted Hate. That is my favorite book out of the entire series, but I love Twisted Lies so much that I felt like it was not fair for it to not be on this list. So Twisted Hate follows Jules and Josh, and they are absolute enemies. Jules is Josh's sister's best friend, and they have never liked each other. They've always had this rivalry going on, and every time they're around each other, they are constantly bantering and throwing, accusations and insults at each other. It is just the most fun and like bantery and sexy story, but they end up in this like enemies to with benefits relationship where they're basically hate fucking every chance that they get, and it ends up turning into a real relationship. It was so good. I love this book so much, and I'm so glad I was able to read it this year. And then Twisted Lies is a fake dating billionaire romance, and oh my god, it was delicious. This one follows Stella and Christian. Stella is living in this apartment that she has gotten for really cheap because Christian has always had a crush on her, but when Stella needs to like boost her Instagram followers, she thinks it is better to be in a relationship to help gain the followers, and Christian offers to be her fake boyfriend, and they end up like moving in together. It's like forced proximity. They have like the best freaking relationship and chemistry. It was just so fun. He's very like domineering, sexy man, and the two of them together, I just love them on page. They were so fun to watch, and seeing their relationship grow from what was fake into what was something that was so real and authentic was just so beautiful to see, and I'm really glad that I read this one. Up next, I want to talk about a book I never thought would be on my favorites list just because it wasn't one that I ever had like on my list of things like, I know I'm gonna love this, but I'm so glad that I read it because I adored it, and that is Jade Legacy, the last and final book in the Greenbone saga by Fonda Lee. I loved this book so much, and I felt like every book that I read, I loved and loved it even more. Like, I think Jade War I gave 4 stars, and then the next book, Jade, I don't know what the freaking books in the series are. The next book I gave 4.5, and then Jade Legacy I gave 5 stars. It was so good. After 30 plus years with these characters, you learn to love them and root for them and want the best for them. And this book broke me so bad, but it was so good. It was so worth it. All of the time that we spent with those characters felt so like true and real, and the characters really felt like they could jump off the page. If you don't know anything about the Greenbone saga, this one follows a series where you have 2 clans that are battling for what they call Jade, which is a substance that they can use to enhance their abilities, so it makes them stronger, faster. And the Greenbone clan and the Mountain clan have been like dueling for ages, and this like war is finally coming to a head, and you are following this political battle between the two of them over a span of 30 years, and you watch these characters fight for what they believe in. It's so good. It's so good. It's so political. It's the most political book I've ever read, but honestly, it makes me want to pick up more political fantasies because that one was just so beautifully crafted. Then, of course, I have to talk about the 2 TJ Klune books that I read this year, and both of them ended up being 5 stars and one of my favorite books, and that is In the Lives of Puppets and Under the Whispering Door. Both of them very different, but also very similar and really amazing. In the Lives of Puppets follows a real boy that ends up in a family of robots, and it is a found family adventure story of these characters learning more about themselves themselves, falling in love, and fighting for the family that they have chosen. It's so beautiful. It's sci-fi. It is a Pinocchio retelling, and it was just so beautifully well written. I feel like TJ Klune writes LGBTQI+ romance, cozy fantasy books so well. He's a master at his craft. I'm so glad that I read this one. It was one that I was a little bit nervous about, but I'm so glad that it was as amazing as all the rest of his books. And then after having this book on many a list, I finally picked up and read Under the Whispering Door, and I loved it. This one follows a character who passes away and then ends up at his own funeral, and he gets taken by like a passenger of death, like a reaper, I guess, to come to this way station. It is a coffee shop, a bakery, like kind of like a house in the middle of the underworld, and they are like helping people pass on into the next phase of their life. He stays there and has this found family aspect, a male-male relationship at the center, and just a really amazing book about learning to live, being kinder to those around you, and what it means to fall in love. It was so beautiful. It was so sad. It definitely made me cry, and I'm so glad that I read it. Another win for TJ Klune. Okay, that is everything that I don't have with me, but now let's go ahead and jump into the ones I have. And I have to just get this one off my list because it's a lot. And this is when you're gonna be like, Kaylani, you couldn't just choose one? And I said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And don't make me, because I won't. Actually, I might. But this is all the Kennedy Ryan books that I read this year. And I'm obsessed. I read so many books by Kennedy Ryan this year, and there's actually a few of them that I read that I don't actually own, so that's even better. I read a few of her like short novella books, and I love her. I love her. She has become my new favorite author of all time. There is literally a single book that I have read from her that I have not loved, and I mean like loved with a capital L. Loved it so freaking much. She writes absolutely beautifully crafted romances with extremely real people at the center of her romances that go through real hard, life-changing shit, but also have like just a beautiful, swoony characters that you can't help but root for romance. And I love her. I love her work. I love her writing. I love her as a person. I was able to meet her this year, and it was honestly the highlight of my year. It was just so freaking good, and I love it. I love it. So I'm gonna quickly run through all of the books I read. I think there's only one book on this list that I gave less than 5 stars, but it was close enough that I didn't feel like I needed to take it off the list. So let's run through them. So we have Real. This is a producer-actress romance. We have the Grip trilogy. I love this series. We have the novella Flow, the first full-length novel Grip, and then Still, the ending of the series. Queen Move, which is technically the 3rd book in the All the King's Men series. This is a friends to lovers, second chance, right person, wrong time romance. Then we have the All the King's Men series by Kennedy Ryan. The series is like a political, right person, wrong time, age gap, second chance romance. And it's so good. It's so good. It's definitely more political of a romance than I've ever read, but honestly, it was amazing. Then I have the remainder of the Hoops series that I read this year. So I read Hookshot, the last and final book in the series, and then the novellas that go along with it. So Hoop Shorts has 2 novellas, Holiday Hoops being one of them, and then another novella that she put into this bind up, and all of them were amazing. All of them were 5 stars, and I love the series so much. I don't know how I forgot to grab it, but we also have Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. This is a second chance, marriage in trouble, love after divorce romance, and it was so good. So good, and definitely a new favorite. All right, that is everything that I read from Kennedy Ryan this year. She was like a true gem that I found in 2023 that made my reading experience that much better. Up next, we have Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings, the first book in the Magnolia Parks universe series. And oh my gosh, this book is a hot mess. It is a messy, toxic romance, but oh my god, did I love it. This is one of those books that I think back on with equal measures of hate and love. It's the book that I think back on like truly I've never felt such a visceral reaction for a book. I loved it and hated it equally. I threw it and then I sobbed. It was definitely an experience, to say the least, and I really love this book. This one follows BJ and Magnolia. They have been on again, off again, boyfriend and girlfriend for many a year now, and they have been off for quite a while after BJ cheated on Magnolia, and they are kind of in this like codependent relationship where BJ sleeps with other women all the time, and Magnolia is constantly in relationships with other men but never has the ability to be physically intimate with them. And they're constantly like coming back to each other after every breakup or hookup, and they sleep in the same bed every night. And it's a messy, rich kids set in, I think, like London. It's like Gossip Girl, but like English. These 2 characters are constantly hurting each other and making mistakes and fucking up and really bringing all of their friends into the center of their drama. It's a wild ride. I feel like if you don't like messy romance and you don't like a book that doesn't have an HEA, don't read this. But if you are down for the journey that they're going to bring you on, definitely jump on this train because it is so good. Some of the best lines I've ever read are in this book, and I cannot wait to do a reread and then move on with the rest of the series. Then we have the last 2 books in the Knockemount series. We have Things We Hide from the Light and Things We Left Behind by Lucy Score. Oh, this series holds a very special place in my heart. Things We Hide from the Light is Nash's story, and Things We Left Behind is Lucian's story, and honestly, both of them were just so beautiful, so heartwarming, so hilarious. I have laughed out loud many a time in this book, and I just had such a wonderful experience reading this series. I couldn't pick between the two, so I had to include them both. Nash and Lena have a very interesting relationship. Lena comes into town, and Nash is a very tortured hero at this point. He has gone through a pretty life-threatening experience in the first book, and he's really reeling and trying to heal from that. And Lena kind of comes into his life and helps him pick up the pieces while also trying to learn how to be in a relationship. She's never really had that in her life. She doesn't really know how to do it, but she knows that she wants to try for Nash. It's a beautiful romance. It's so freaking good, and the sex scenes, oh my god, these are steamy as hell. And then we have Things We Left Behind, and this is Lucian and Sloane's story. This has been a long time coming. They have been teased from book 1, and they hate each other. I mean, hate each other. This is a second chance romance. They had something in the past, and things definitely ended badly, and it is years later after Sloane's father has just passed away. Lucian is in town and kind of helps pick up the pieces and is there for her in ways that nobody else really is, and they end up finding out that the hate that they had for each other is not as intense as they thought, and those feelings from the past are being drugged back up, and it's their second chance romance. It is so good. It is so good. I sobbed, I cried, I laughed, I had a great time. It was a great end to the series, and I'm sad that it's over, but I'm glad I was able to read it. All right, another series on here. Man, again, there's no way I could have chosen a book from this series, but it is a series that is so strange to me because I actually read the first book in this series. Was it this year? I don't even know, but I read it and I didn't really like it. I gave it like a 3.5 4-star at the time, and I was like, it was fine, but I hadn't really planned on picking up the next book in the series. And then I picked up the series because my friends have been talking about how much they loved it, and then I read it, loved it, got all the way through it, and became obsessed, and then ended up reading the next book that this author put out in this world. And honestly, this series is tattooed on my heart and my soul. There will never be another series that has affected me in the way that this series has, and this is just one of those series that will always be in the back of my mind, constantly running on in a loop because it was just so good. And all of that to say, it is the Ravenhood series by Miss Kate Stewart. The first one being Flock, then we have Exodus, and then the last book in this trilogy is The Finish Line, and then there is a legacy book that follows a different character from this series, and that is One Last Rainy Day. And wow, this series is devastating, heartbreaking, wonderful, beautiful, extremely well written, so freaking smart, so ingenious. Like, I just don't understand how Kate Stewart did it. I know there are a lot of people that don't love this series and don't get it, but when you get it, you get it. And when you know, you know. And honestly, this series is just incredible. It's one of the best written romance heartbreaking stories I've ever read, and I just wish that I could go back and read it again for the first time because there's nothing like it. It's definitely a series that is hard to get through and it's hard to read, but it's one of those that I constantly think about picking back up again and reading because it's just so good. You can definitely not read One Last Rainy Day out of place. Like, you have to read it after reading the trilogy, so keep that in mind. Don't pick this one up first, but it's just so good. It's so good, and they are definitely in my favorites of all time. At this point, it's just my favorite series that I've ever read because the next one is another 5-book series that I just couldn't pick. Don't make me, okay? Thank you. And that is the Chestnut Springs series. You guys know I have been raving about this entire series for so long. At this point, it's part of my brand. It's just so good. It's so good. I love the series so much. They are small town, like cowboy romance. There's a split romance in here. It's incredible. It's amazing. It's wonderful. They are so steamy. They are so heartfelt. They feel so real. I didn't really know how much I loved small town until I read this series. It changed the game for me, and I literally now I want to like read every freaking small town book that I can ever find because they're just so freaking good. So good. And Elsie Silver writes some of the best small town, smutty, wonderful, swoony romances that I just have so much fun with. So the first book is Flawless. Then we have Heartless. If I had to choose, this would probably be my favorite in the series. Then we have Powerless. This one is really good. This is a sports romance, like best friend, second chance type of thing. Oh, so good. Reckless. It's everyone's like least favorite in the series. I personally really enjoyed it. And then we have Hopeless. This is my second favorite in the series, I think. I loved this so much. I was waiting for Beau's story for forever, and I'm so glad that I was able to read this series and love it as much as I did. Okay, this one is a little bit different than all the other series that I've included, but that is just because I really enjoyed these particular books in the series, but I didn't want to choose between the two, so I definitely want to talk about them both. And that is Juniper Hill and Jasper Vale by W. Perry. The second and fourth book in the Eden series, Oh, these are so good. These are so freaking good. I absolutely love these books and this series as a whole, but these two stand out for me. Juniper Hill is a single mom, small town romance where she ends up moving in with a man who has like an extra room. He's one of the Edens. His name is Knox. He runs the hotel and he's a cook, and he has like a spare like room that this woman can use as she looks for a new place and just starts a new job in this small town after she is getting away from her very controlling family. And they have a very spoony, wonderful romance. Knox has had a very troubled past and he definitely has a hard time opening up and being vulnerable with people, but the two of them just mesh so well together and they are just so freaking amazing. I love this book so much and I need to do a reread. Then we have Jasper Vale, and if there's one thing that I love, it is a marriage of convenience. But this one is more like an accidental marriage that turned into a marriage of convenience and like a fake dating situation. It's so good. So good. Jasper is one of those men that is kind of hard to like at the beginning, but once you do like him, or at least for me, I just wanted to eat this man up. He was everything. And the way that he treated Eloise was honestly life goals. Like, he was just incredible. And I love a good fake dating relationship. There is honestly nothing better than it. And every time it gets done and done well, it's an automatic win for me. And this one is definitely one that I think very, very highly of. One of my favorites in the series. And I need to finish the series up so I can see how everything else plays out. But I honestly love this one so much. Up next, I want to talk about June 1st by Jennifer Hartman. This is going to be a book that's not going to be for everyone, and that's okay. Not every book is going to be. So this one follows Brant and June. Brant, at 12 years old, had a very, very traumatic thing happen to him. His family passed away, and under very extreme circumstances, and he ends up moving into the house next door with a family that he has grown up with and absolutely loves. On the day that his family dies, the family next door and actually ends up having a baby. Her name is June, and she and Brant grow up together throughout their lifetime. Brant has always loved June, but he's known that his love for June has never quite been the same as he feels for June's brother, his best friend. And as they get older, June and Brant have this undeniable connection that never quite feels like family. They never have ever claimed like the sibling relationship, but everyone else in the world sees them as siblings. Until one day things change and they create a relationship. This is a absolute tragedy of a book, but it's also so beautiful. It's so heartfelt. It's so absolutely like heartbreaking, but so beautiful to watch these two characters learn how to love each other in a way that feels the best for them. And it's definitely one of those books that is taboo. It's definitely not going to be for everyone. This relationship is going to rub people the wrong way. I personally really, really loved it, and I thought it was absolutely beautiful the way that Jennifer Hartman wrote it. I need to do a reread. It's definitely a chunkier book, but it was so, so good. Let's talk about a fantasy romance. I have Powerless by Lauren Roberts. This book blew me away. It was one of those books that definitely surprised me. I knew I was going to like it because everybody and their mother was talking about it, but I was worried because it was YA fantasy, and I just don't read a lot of YA fantasy anymore, and if I do, it's not usually a new favorite, but this one was so good. This book follows Peyton and Kai. They live in a world where people have magic. You either have mundane magic or more elite magic, and Kai is the prince of this kingdom, and he is in line to become the new enforcer. So basically the person that goes out and takes care of all of the like dirty, down and dirty tasks for the king. And then Peyton lives in this world, but she is actually an ordinary. She has no magic, and that is absolutely against the law. Any person that does not have magic is executed on the spot. But she has been growing up her entire life tricking people into thinking that she has magic because her father taught her how to be a psychic, to see the future. But really she just is really good at reading people. One day, Kai and Peyton get into an altercation where they run into each other. She steals from him and then ends up saving his life because he is being beaten by a silencer who's able to silence magic, and she saves his life. And then after that, like, the town puts her into this challenge that happens every year where they go in and fight for the prize, and it is kind of like the Hunger Games, although people don't have to die, although people in this game do die. And she has no magic. She's not unable to defend herself with magic. She has to figure out how to do it with brute force, and it is a relationship between Peyton and Kai. There's also kind of like a love triangle thing going on with Kai's brother, and honestly all of it was just so freaking good. It was compelling, it was fast-paced, it was wonderful to watch. These games were so intense, the characters in and of themselves had great banter and great chemistry, and overall it was just a fun read. There's definitely a big twist and turn at the very end of the story, and I'm excited to see where the series goes. Then we have a newer addition to this list, and that is The Plight Before Christmas by Kate Stewart, the same author as the Ravenhood, and this is her like very cute, beautiful second chance Christmas romance, and it was just so beautiful. I really loved this, and it was just one of those second chance romances that felt so incredibly special and so incredibly well done. The writing was beautiful, the characters were incredible, the humor was on point. Like, everything about this book that you would have wanted from a rom-com-y, like, romance set in the holidays, it was spot on. This is also set in the same world as the Ravenhood trilogy, and there is a little cameo in this book that absolutely warmed my heart, and overall it was just a beautiful story. And this book follows Whitney and Eli. Whitney is going home to spend the Christmas with her family. She's had a pretty crap last month. She has a car that is no longer working. She lost the promotion that she was really working hard to get, and she is just at her wit's end. She gets to her family's house with the hopes to, you know, relax, spend some time with her family, and just decompress after the crappy month that she's had, only to find out that her brother has invited his coworker, and his coworker happens to be her ex from college that absolutely broke her heart. And it is a forced proximity, like, wintry, wonderful, swoony second chance romance, and it is so good, so good. The writing was impeccable, the characters had so much chemistry, and for a person that really doesn't like then and now timelines with flashback scenes, this book did it amazingly. And the audiobook, incredible. I'm so glad that I read this one. It's a new favorite of all time, and I need to reread it every holiday season. Then we have Whispers of You by Catherine Cowles. This is one that I just recently read and loved. This book is so freaking good, and after reading a Catherine Cowles that I gave 5 stars and then the next one I gave 3, I was a little wary that I wasn't going to like this. So this is a small town romantic suspense second chance romance. This one follows Holt and Ren. Holt and Ren were in a relationship in high school that was flourishing, was going very well, and something absolutely tragic happens to Ren when they are in high school, and Holt just can't stick around. So he leaves and is no longer obviously in that relationship with Ren, and he comes back 10 years later to this town after his father had a heart attack and needs a little help around the town, and he is forced to run into Ren on a daily basis, and this second chance romance between the two of them. There is some trauma here that is definitely holding both of these characters back, and it's very hard for them to commit to a relationship, but there is still an undeniable connection there, and the two of them have never let each other go. It is a beautiful, beautiful second chance romance. It is so well written. It made me cry so many times, and is one of those books that is like tattooed into my soul, and a book that I cannot wait to reread. Let's get back to fantasy. Sarah J Maas has been on my favorites list every year for the past 3 or 4 years at this point, and this year is no exception. I finally finished up the Throne of Glass series, and the 3 books that I hadn't already read in that series definitely needed to be on my favorites list. So we have Empire of Storms, Tower of Dawn, and Kingdom of Ash. I am so freaking sad that this series has come to an end. I can't even tell you the pain and the anguish and the absolute emptiness I felt when finishing Kingdom of Ash, but this book series is so masterfully written. I know that not everyone is a Sarah J Maas fan, and I get it. Every book is not going to be for everybody, but this series, I don't understand the dislike for this series. It is masterful. It is beautifully written. It is so well plotted and well thought out, with so many little things that come back into play as the series continues. It's so good. These characters are top tier, and the way that they have evolved and changed throughout the series is just so incredible to watch. I sobbed. I was absolutely so incredibly happy. I was so in love. I was swooning. I was having the best and the worst time of my life reading this series, and it is definitely a brand new favorite. Oh my god. I want to reread it, but then again, I'm not even closely prepared to what the series is going to bring to me the second time around. Sticking on a fantasy train, we have to talk about the absolute sensation of the year. You know what's coming, I had to talk about, and that is Fourth Wing and Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. I freaking love these books. I did read both of these books twice this year, so that just shows you how much I absolutely loved them. Fourth Wing is the first book, Iron Flame is the second book. They both came out this year and it took the internet and the world by storm. And honestly, I understand. They are so good. I know not everybody liked Iron Flame. I personally freaking loved it. It's another one of those books that felt absolutely masterfully planned and well plotted and well spaced, and the character development in this series is just incredible. If you don't know what this is about, this follows Violet Sorrengail, who ends up in the writer's quadrant after her mother kind of forces her into it, and she has a chronic illness that makes her bones and her joints very frail. So this is definitely not the best place for her to be, but she's determined to survive, and she ends up meeting a guy there named Xaden Riderson. He is like her enemy, and it is an enemies to lovers fantasy romance with politics at the forefront, and it is so good. It's so good. The dragons are incredible. The relationships are incredible. The friendships are incredible. Everything about this book is amazing, and I'm so glad that I read it this year, and I cannot wait for book 3. I have a few other series I want to talk about in tandem. The first one is the Part of Your World series by Abby Jimenez, the first one being Part of Your World, and the second one being Yours Truly. Both of these books are so good. So freaking good. We have a small town, like one night stand, romance that is just absolutely swoony and incredible. And then we have a workplace romance, fake dating, with just an absolutely incredible female and male main character, but the male main character has some really incredible mental health rep. It's just so good. Abby Jimenez's writing is so incredibly well paced and so swoony and so beautiful. I cried in both of these books, and honestly, I'm not surprised. I cry in almost everything, but at this point, these books really have been tattooed on my soul. It's a book that I think about all the time. This book broke the hell out of me. I got to the author's note and sobbed like a baby. So I'm really glad that I read these two. Abby Jimenez is now at the top of my list of authors that I want to read more from, and I cannot wait to pick these books back up and read them again. Then I want to talk about the Kings of Sin series by Anna Huang, the first one being King of Wrath, and then King of Pride and King of Greed, the second and third book in the series as well. All three of them I read this year. All three of them I gave 5 stars. All three of them I loved and adored. I don't know, like I said earlier, Anna Huang puts crack in her books, and they're just so freaking good. So freaking good. I think out of all of them, I would have to say King of Pride is my favorite. I really enjoyed the story. This is like a taboo, almost like workplace romance with these two characters that can't be together because the employees and the members of the Valhalla Club have like a non-fraternization clause, and the two of them end up having an undeniable connection and can't stay away. This one is A Marriage in Trouble, a revival of their relationship after divorce. After Dominic misses their 10-year anniversary trip, and Alessandra is fed up, she files for divorce, and Dominic spends the rest of the book trying to get back on her good graces. It's so good. And then King of Wrath is a marriage of convenience story that was also just so incredible. So overall, really excited for this series. Cannot wait to read more, and I literally am just so happy that I read Anna Huang over the last 2 years because it was a great decision. Another author that I'm super glad that I picked up, and that is Liz Tomford, the first one being Mile High, the second one being The Right Move, the first and second book in the Windy City series. I love this series so much. So much. The first book I loved, and the second book came in and just stole the show. It was so freaking good, and I'm literally so excited to read more books in this series. Mile High is a forced proximity, enemies to lovers, workplace romance. It is a sports romance where the two characters are not supposed to be together because the hockey team and the jet company have a non-fraternization clause, and the two of them are not supposed to be together, but they do have a connection that cannot be denied, and they have a wonderful, like, secret hidden romance. It's so good. It's so good. And then The Right Move, oh my god. This is a forced proximity, best friend's brother, fake dating romance. With a tortured hero and a heroine that is just so beautiful and funny and light and bubbly. It's just so freaking good. It's so good. Ryan Shea could do no wrong. This man, he ate. He ate. You know what I mean? He ate. It's so good, and I cannot wait to move on to the rest of the series. An unexpected favorite for the year, and that is Butcher and Blackbird by Brynn Weaver. This book absolutely took me by surprise. I picked it up because Karina and Nikki had read it and loved it, and I was like, okay, I need to know what this is about. And this is a book that follows 2 serial killers that meet under interesting circumstances, and then every year they come back and do this game where they hunt down and kill other serial killers, and it is a very unhinged and crazy relationship between the two of them that is just so good. It is one of the funniest books I have ever read. It's also very, very dark, very unhinged, but just so incredibly well written. I cannot wait for book 2, and I heard the author's gonna ruin some more food for me, so pray for me. Keeping on the trend of dark romances, I have That Sik Luv by Jessie Hall. I contemplated putting either this or Haunting Adeline in this spot, but this one definitely takes the cake for my favorite stalker dark romance. This book is just so good. This one follows Bryony and Arrow, and Bryony has a stalker, and this stalker has kind of been trying to tell her that there is something amiss in the life that she is living. She has a very religious upbringing and background, and there is a lot of corruption happening in the background that she is unaware of, and Arrow is trying to make her aware of it. His stalker tendencies come to light, but she is curious about the dark side that he is willing to bring her into. And there's a relationship between the two of them. It is very dark. It is very, very dark, but it's so good. It's so good. It's definitely one of those books that keeps you hooked until the very end. And the audiobook is done by Joe Arden, who also did the audiobook for Butcher and Blackbird, and he is an absolute master at audiobook work. He also did, The Plight Before Christmas and the Ravenhood trilogy. So if there's one thing that I've learned about this year, first of all, I love those books, and I love Joe Arden. The last 3, we have Happy Place by Emily Henry. This is a fake dating, second chance romance where these two characters end up on the same vacation with friends with the intention of telling them that they are breaking off their relationship, but when they get there, the house is going to sell and this is the last vacation that they'll have together as friends, and so they decide to fake their relationship, pretend like they're still together, and try to convince their friends that they're still happy. And a second chance romance between the two of them. I really loved it. Emily Henry is a fave for me every year. I love everything that she writes, and I'm hoping that next year will be no exception. Then we have Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood, her newest release in the STEMinist world, and I loved it. You know what? I'm not surprised. I have loved every Ali Hazelwood that I have read, and every year she has ended up on my favorites list. It's just so freaking good. This one is like a fun twist on a fake dating romance. This main character, Elsie, she is a fake girlfriend for people that like hire her to be her fake girlfriend, and she is fake dating this guy who brings her over to a family dinner, and she meets his brother, and they don't have the best relationship. He kind of has an idea that things are not right between the two of them, but she ends up meeting him during an interview where he is like working in, I think it's like biochemistry, and she knows who he is. And in her interview, he finds out that she's not who she said she was when he met her at the dinner with their family. And so it ends up being a relationship between the two of them, but it's like a weird take on a fake dating. I loved it. It was so good. I really loved the important topics that were brought up in here about like the workplace and women in STEM. It's always really great to read that from Ali Hazelwood, and this was another win for me this year. And the last book that I want to talk about is the newest Elle Kennedy, and that is The Graham Effect. This book was so good. After years of being away from the off-campus series, it was so nice to see a nice, fun, fresh twist on this series with a legacy book. This one follows Gigi Graham, and she is the daughter of Garrett Graham, who we meet in the off-campus series. She is also a female hockey player, and she ends up in a relationship with another hockey player that she doesn't have the best relationship with. So Ryder and Gigi end up helping each other out. Gigi needs help with her plays behind the net, and Ryder wants to get into her father's like coaching gig at the end of the school year, and so they end up helping each other out, and they end up creating a relationship between the two of them, and it's just so freaking good. It was one of those stories that took me a little while to like fall in love with, but by the time I got to the end, I was absolutely invested. I cried, I laughed, I had a great time, and this story is just so beautiful. It's a bit longer for Elle Kennedy, but I feel like everything on the page was absolutely necessary, and the heartfelt moments at the very end really solidified this as a new favorite. So really glad that I read this. I love Elle Kennedy. I'm excited to see what she comes out with next. Alright friends, that is everything for my favorites of the year. It was a very, very long list, so if you stayed through to the end, I really, really appreciate you. I know you would like to hear what my favorite book of the year is, so I'm going to talk about that really quick. And it was really hard for me to choose, but there is one book that has had the most incredible impact on me. This author has really honestly changed my life, and this book is unlike anything that I've ever read. This couple is my favorite couple of all time. There is nobody that will ever top them, and that's a sad thing to say because I will never read somebody as good as them, but also like it's beautiful to know that I read my favorite couple of all time, and that is Still by Kennedy Ryan, the last and final book in the Grip trilogy. This book is beautiful, incredible, wonderful, so many things that I wish that I could talk about in this book. It is definitely a tougher one. There is some difficult subject matter that is tackled in this story, but it is so beautifully well done. Just like every time that Kennedy Ryan takes on a tough topic, it is handled with absolute care, and it was just so beautiful. The conversations in this series, the couple, the growth, the characters, everything about it is just so good. Everything that I could say about this book, like high praise, consider it said, because it is just so freaking good. I convinced my other friends to read the series, and they have also loved it, and honestly I just don't know if there is going to be a series that will ever top this one for me. I love it so much. I have reread it already this year. I read it all the way through one time and then read it again towards the end of the year, and it was incredible. It was wonderful. It was beautiful. I love this book so much, and I'm so glad that Kennedy Ryan is a new favorite of mine because I don't know if I could live without this book. Alrighty friends, that is the end of this video. Let me know if you read any of the books that I talked about today and what you thought of them. Feel free to share with me any of your favorites from 2023. I would love to know that as well. And if you made it to the end and you don't know what else to comment, leave a star emoji. I love you all so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. If you liked it, please make sure to give it a big ol' thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe before you leave. And of course, leave any comments, questions, and suggestions in the comment section below. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.
Baby,